Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Lucifer, Season 5, Episode 11. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up with the whole conversation about God kind of losing control of his powers. Obviously, Aminadab and Lucifer, it's the whole thing of like, right, we're going to be like a united front, and Lucifer constantly has to keep confirming like, no, we are going to talk to him together. He's like, yes, we need to kind of tell him to go home. It's like, good, because Lucifer knows that anytime they have a conversation with their dad, Aminadab ends up being the first one to crack. And so obviously they end up finding out their dad's back there like fixing stuff. And it's like, no, my powers are under control. I just want to be helpful and stuff like that. And obviously they're Aminadab still won't, like, it's like, oh yeah, sure, you need me to hand you this wrench or whatever, Dad. Like, Lucifer's like, really? Like, come on. It's just, he's like, well, come, like, it's still the thing of Aminadab still turns into a bit of a kid. Because I think he's always been the loyal son, and he always kind of falls back into that a little bit. As, like, Lucifer kind of brought that up in the first episode of in episode 9 about how, he constantly does that. Like, you made such a progression of yourself becoming your own person, and now you're going back to being dad's lack again. Certain elements of that. But also, obviously, Lucifer goes to work, and it's like, all right, he wants him and Chloe just to kind of jump into the case, which, she ends up showing up late, which for him, it's like, whoa, did I do something wrong? Did I say something, or did I not say, she was busy dealing with Trixie because Trixie took her handcuffs and handcuffed the kid to a lunch table because the kid was pushing someone else. But also, like, Trixie's acting a little snot-nosed bratish, especially when she's with Linda. Oh, that was crazy. She was like, because, like, Linda's like, oh, so why did you, and she was like, oh, really? That's all you got? That's all you got? No wonder Lucifer's still in therapy. And I should have realized the fact that she made that remark is kind of a key sign for a lot, but we'll circle back to that. But I was like, why is she so, she's a little snot-nosed brat? But it's just because she was lashing out. She made such a remark because it's like, you're angry at someone else, but we're not always good at, like, really dealing with our feelings, like when there's stuff like deep down, rather than kind of confronting it. A lot of times we're in denial and we kind of lash out at people. To be fair, who knows denial better than Lucifer, so it's actually very befitting in certain regards. So we'll circle back to that soon enough. But obviously, Lucifer's dad shows up at his job, and it's just like, and there's the whole dance situation, and it's like, oh, he's like, I'm so sorry for sleeping your wife. I didn't know she was married at the time. He's like, oh, no, it's good. It's fine. Ha, 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 ha. And he's squeezing Dan's hand, and he's like, oh, you're hurting me a little bit. I was like, okay, is Lucifer, are you going to step in at any point in time? And, like, God goes from so jolly and fun to just scowling, and you're like, oh, boy. And then Dan literally explodes. I was like, what the? And then, like, everything snapped back. I was like, wait, what, did he just, did he put that, did he incept that into Dan's head or something like that? But it's like, oh no, it actually happened. He's like, you just exploded him. I said, yeah, but I put him back together. I was like, Dan's already having a hard enough time dealing with all this. You literally killed him and then put him back together. That's mad messed up because he slept with your wife. Really, bro? That's super messed up. So he's kind of telling his dad to kind of get out of there, leave him alone, like, while they go work on a case. Well, he actually ends up disappearing, and it's like, well, my dad finally listened to me. But lo and behold, shows up at the crime scene, and it's like, oh, hey, great news, I'm human now. He's like, because I've never spent a lot of time to really get to understand you and your circumstances, so basically, like, how much time on Earth has changed him, so he decides I'm going to participate in it as well by making myself human. So that's interesting. Didn't know you could just straight up make yourself human. It's like, yeah, basically he hid his powers away somewhere. He's like, temporary, because I guess it's like, well, all I have to do is track them down, well, which we find out later on. All you have to do is just, like, willingly take them back. But obviously it's a whole thing of like, wait, your dad's human now and everything, and he wants to kind of join on investigations. I finally got my God and Ella scene that I wanted. It's like, whoa, you're Lucifer's dad? He's like, yeah. And she hugs him and it's like, yeah. She's like, I finally get to meet you. He's like, yes, nice to finally meet you. He's like, honestly, don't think all that support. Thanks for all the support. Don't think it goes unnoticed. She's confused and everything, but it's like, yeah, she is like your biggest supporter and everything. And so, but obviously him keep drinking. Oh, brain freeze, and then he stopped. It's like, don't worry, it's going to go away. And he keeps drinking. Another one. Oh, it hurts again. He's just like, give me that and just stop drinking it. So he keeps following them. it's so interesting. I also love that interaction between the Doctor when she was like, oh yeah, there's that new drug YSD, and it's like, oh, so what does it look like? This, and then like you have Lucifer pulling out his little tray of drugs, and I love that he actually had one, and it's like, wait, what? Because he actually knows the person who's supplying it, the Colonel. They're gonna go on a sting, which he's like, oh god, it's like, oh my god, really? What should I wear? What should I talk like? It's like, no, go back to the penthouse and just wait there. We'll handle this. Obviously, it's a situation where it's like, oh, will Lucifer be fine? Lucifer will be fine. It's like, well, he is invulnerable now, so it should be okay. But lo and behold, his dad's there, which I love that his dad's there telling all these stories, because even like the Colonel being like, whoa, this is your dad? It's like, yeah, he didn't mention that. Oops. And so he's hitting it off because he's like, oh yeah, like my son, he led this little rebellion and stuff like that. And obviously the Colonel's like, honestly, it's a good thing you have such a good relationship with your dad. It's like, your dad's so supportive. And the Colonel basically goes a little bit into her mom issues. And he was like, my dad is as supportive as a wet blanket or something like that. And then obviously he lets it slip about this being a sting and everything. And obviously, like, he was like, I'm sweating and the room is spinning. He's like, it's a floor spinning for you, Lucifer? I was like, oh, I guess that was just him being afraid for the first time. Well, you're an almighty being. You've never had to be afraid. And then he gets pistol whipped and he's like, ow, and it's like, never felt pain before either, so but Lucifer snaps in that moment and he attacks all of them, and I thought it was so interesting because his dad is like, there's no need for violence, but also like Lucifer's reaction, it's like, say whatever he wants to, he does love his dad. Once again, it's just they all want his love in return, but it's like, yeah, he got so defensive. I mean, to be fair, because in his current state his dad could die, and it's like that's what triggered him. The fact is that he does care about the people around him. I mean, that's why he was telling God to leave, because he's like, yeah, you being around here, your powers being unstable, you could accidentally end up killing the people around here that I care about, And so Lucifer took him back to the penthouse, and he brings up an interesting conversation. He was like, why do you use that hell face of yours, your devil face that you use in hell? And for Lucifer, it's like, wait, you're just literally going to judge the face I use when I, saved your life with it? He's like, no, it's just like, the fact is, why did you choose that face? He was like, being like, you chose that face because that's how you see yourself. Once again, angel self-actualized, because no one else has a face like that, because he is an angel, so he shouldn't look that way. None of the other angels do. Maze looks the way she does because she's actually a demon, but maybe there's actually some self-actualization on that part as well. But obviously, there's the whole thing with Trixie, because Trixie realizing who she's really mad at. At first, I was thinking she was going to be mad at her parents. In actuality, she's mad at Lucifer, which we really got into the psychology behind that later on, which I thought was kind of fascinating when he kind of goes missing for a bit. Because Maze was tracking him down, trying to kill him because she wants payback, because it's like, right, you're the one that could give me a soul, but you're all powerful and I can't do anything. It's like, wait, you don't have any powers? Like, she was just kind of wanting someone to lash out at and just be mad at, considering her circumstances, But Trixie and him are sitting down and talking. And the reason why Trixie was mad at Lucifer is because he left without saying goodbye. Like, Ella was mad too at the beginning of the season, but, it's like, oh, he went to Florida without saying goodbye. I thought we were friends. So I think that's also why, like, in the first half of season 5, like, why she was so okay with helping Maze get that story, like, from him, because for her, it's like, it was probably almost a little bit of payback, because for her, it's like, yeah, she's been mad at Lucifer for a while now, because, and it's like, he didn't, say goodbye or anything, which Ella was pissed as well, but for Ella, it was like, I can't stay mad at you, but for Trixie, it's that, plus a combination of she can see her mom sad, and Lucifer's connected to that, so that's why for her, she was like, your hair is stupid, and he was like, no, my hair is immaculate, and we both know it, and it's like, oh, you're banned from, like, the penthouse for, like, a month or something, because it's like, oh, you're supposed to be a grown-up, but you're, like, a child, and he was like, oh, really? Then fine, you're banned for, like, a month or whatever, so, but it was like she was just mad because her mom is sad and she can tell. Like, Chloe tries to keep up a strong front. We even saw it during the musical number last episode. And that was our kind of jump starting that storyline and element there. Which obviously, for God, he ends up telling Trixie about parents making mistakes, that he feels like he made some mistakes. It's like you try to kind of do a balance of being, teaching your kids responsibility, consequences, of being there for him. But for him, with Lucifer, he's like, I just never quite got it right. And so a lot of Lucifer's issues and stuff like that, he's like, it kind of comes from me, my mistakes as a parent. It's like, we kind of saying, like, even adults kind of mess up and are kind of in denial and stuff like that. So and it's like, even from a young age, she might not have the context for everything, but Trixie understands a lot more. Children in general understand a lot more than a lot of their parents will give them credit for, because even Chloe realizes that. Because it's sad, actually, at the end of the day, what we end up finding out about, like, the main thing behind this case. It turns out the person responsible for all this was actually the doctor that they met earlier in the episode. She's the killer, because basically, she's been messing up on the past few surgeries, and the Almighty, who was the victim in this episode, ended up finding out that she kind of messed up his surgery. He wanted to get the record. He was trying to break in to get the records, and to cover herself, she killed him, because she's also been taking, like, YSD, because her, like, hands are shaking, and it's supposed to steady her hands and everything. So, which Chloe kind of gets it. She was like, yeah, like, I get it, like, you need to keep up a front of being strong, and sometimes we don't let that shield down sometimes. And sometimes, by us doing that, keeping that shield up all the time, trying to pretend like everything is okay when it's not, we're hurting the people around us. So, like, she's hurting people in the sense of, like, the people she's performing these surgeries on, even though she's not in the best condition. And she ended up murdering Almighty just to cover up that trail. So that ends up, later on with her having that conversation with Trixie, kind of saying, like, to realize, like, yeah, you're 11 years old, but I need to realize, like, you are picking up on a lot more things. It's like, because Trixie's like, I'm sorry, but it's like, it's a conversation about both of them kind of being in denial. And she's talking about, it's like, you're sad, Mom. She's like, right. And the fact is, I kind of have been, and I just kind of been, in denial myself about it. It's like, she's like, well, it's about Lucifer. And Chloe's like, yeah, like, the fact is, I don't know where we stand, whether we're going to be partners, whether we're going to be something more. She doesn't know. And for her, it's like, but she knows that her and Lucifer can't stay like this forever, because, like, obviously when they were saying their goodbyes, she was kind of turning her cheek when he was coming to kiss her, and it was like, oh, wait, she's like, I just wasn't sure. He's like, no, it's my fault. And it's like, they're so awkward. It was like this very awkward exchange. She kind of goes in for a kiss, and he hugs her, and it's just like, oh, it's because they don't know where they stand after everything. And obviously she doesn't blame Lucifer. She knows he's got his long list of issues, but it's like, where do we stand? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend? Are we just friends? Like, what is our future together and stuff like that? So he's trying to figure things out. He's trying to fix himself so that he can be. But, maybe that's the thing, because self-actualizing and all that, he doesn't believe that he can love, and it's terrifying him. It's aggravating and frustrating for him. And I think that's what's kind of, giving him blue balls in the love department, I think. But obviously for Chloe, it's like, we can't keep going like this. I need to tell Lucifer how I really feel. It's like, well, what happens then? It's like, I don't know. But regardless of anything, if you're 11 years old, 111 years old, if there's like a rock candy, asteroid or meteorite coming towards a planet, me and your dad will always be your parents and will always love you. Promise, So it's kind of like, no matter what kind of changes happen around us or whatever, like, things might be a little different, but the fact is, me and your dad will always love you, There's also the element of, once again, Dan struggling with everything, because he's so certain that he's going to hell and everything, which I love that he has that conversation with Maze. He's like, you're a demon. She's like, yep. He's like, well, what's hell like? And she's like, oh, it's great. And he's like, oh, really? She's like, oh, the pain, the suffering and everything. She's like, And she's like, oh, you mean for you? Oh, it's going to suck, bro. And he's like, And she's like, yeah, but at least you're lucky enough to have a soul. And then she kind of slaps him. She's like, thanks for reminding me, Dan. But for him, it's like, he believes he's going to go to hell, not just because of this God thing, but because a lot of he's done, let's not forget, Dan's done a lot of shady stuff since, like, he's kind of done some, like, dirty cop stuff in season 1. He did try and have Lucifer killed. Like, he's done some shady stuff that he's not proud of. Even, because him and Maze joining up against some very bad guys, kind of skirting outside the lines of when it came to stuff, because in particular, it was, if I remember correctly, they ended up killing the dude that killed Chloe's dad, right? If I remember correctly. So, like, a lot of those mistakes, that, once again, I'm sure that's another thing about being around God, is like, right, you've probably seen and know all my mistakes. But I think the fact is God never threw it in his face makes me think, like, no, he sees that despite some bumpy roads, you are a good person, you are a good dad. You're trying to be there, you're trying to set a good example. And that's also a worry for him. It's like, for him, he's like, what if, maybe we should send Trixie to like a military school or whatever just to kind of put her on a straight and narrow, because it's like, what if she goes and points down and it's like, wait, you think our 11-year-old is going to go to hell? He's like, I don't know, like maybe, you know, because for him it's, you know, he's worried about himself, and I guess on some level he's like, but if that's inside of me, maybe in some shape or form it's inside of Trixie. So I think that's where a lot of that fear kind of stemmed from, you know. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. What I thought was interesting too is the argument between Amenadiel and Lucifer, when it's kind of like Lucifer's kind of jumping on his throat about dad and everything, and he's like, oh, dad's our dad, he's God, he's almighty, like you need to kind of show him some respect. And in that moment Lucifer was like, yeah, but like he, you know, he was, you know, it's like he's out there alone, scared and afraid, and he was like afraid. And I don't know whether he was recognizing that fear in himself, or was he specifically talking about his dad. I think it was just like his fear of like, right, I'm actually scared that something might happen to dad, you know. Or maybe he's realizing like, right, dad's, a lot of what dad is doing is him being reactionary out of fear, trying to like bring back the family. He feels like it's a little broken, but it's because he turns out, like he shows up because right, I remember where my powers are, because like Trixie gave him an idea about like, oh, we should go home, and he was like, right, home. Thank you. You're so smart, Trick. I thought he was saying like maybe he hid it in heaven, and I was like, how would you get it back from there? Not unless like Amenadiel took you. But it's like, no, apparently he hid it in Charlie's like toy, and I'm like, so you literally had a baby just out and about with the divine power of creation of and destruction of power of everything, just in his toy. Because even like he lights up after he takes the power, and then Linda's like, what just happened? It's like, she's never not realizing, because Charlie was with her most of the day. It's like, wait, I've been just kicking it with God's powers nearby, and I had no idea. That could have gone wrong on so many levels, but for him, it's like, you know, it's safe with family, so that was the whole point behind it. But, obviously with his powers, he goes and talks to Maze, because I love that whole thing about, like, he's like, rough day, Dan's like, rough day, and she's like, yeah, couldn't kill God. You? And he was like, I think God killed me. So let's get more drinks. So he talks to Maze, and it's like, yeah, thanks for not killing me. And he was like, well, you know, Trixie was there, and I didn't want to expose her to that violence. It's like, no, you were following me long before Trixie showed up. You chose not to kill me. And she's like, well, yeah, perfect me demon my ass, you know. And for him, it's like, for her, it's like, I just, you know, it's still the thing of, you know, how can I, like, I don't have a soul. But for him, it's like, because he was saying, like, you said it yourself, you know, the devil fell in love, an angel had a human baby. Like, the fact is that miracles happen all the time, like stuff that we don't expect and don't know could happen. And she's like, a demon just can't grow a soul. And he's like, can't they? Never really thought of it, like, the fact that, because it's like, it is a thing of, like, I guess in my mind, I just always thought, like, she is who she is, and, like, she might be a little rough around the edges, but she is changing much like Lucifer did. And I think for her, she's never really recognized the change in herself, and see how much she's grown and how much she's changed as well here on Earth. That she isn't the same demon she was all those years ago when her and Lucifer came here. Even the demon that was back in season 1, wanting to do any and everything to get back home, to be where she belongs. But obviously, this on Earth, you know, is where she belongs. It's where her life is and everything. But it's also like, if she didn't have a soul, if there wasn't more to her, she wouldn't have the attachment she does. She wouldn't care about people the way she does. Like, time and time again, she doesn't realize that when she does. It's like, you do connect with people even though she doesn't realize it. She probably feels like, once again, I think it is a self-actualizing thing on her part as well, where she thinks, oh, a demon doesn't have a soul, and like, a demon can't grow a soul. But it's like, look at you, you have one. Like, do demons even have consciousness, in the sense of, like, do they feel guilt about things? She does. You know, it's kind of like, right, sorry about the whole, like, betraying you thing. I let Michael get inside of my head and, you know, promise me of something I wanted, you know? So, that's interesting. And obviously, Dan and God had their talk, and he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, you know what? I'm not. You know, the fact of the matter is, you know, I can't, if I could go back, I'd change it. He's like, actually, you know what? I wouldn't. But God's like, honestly, you know, I shouldn't have an issue with who my ex-wife sleeps with, because he was like, I wasn't the best husband. And the fact is that she was able to find someone she was able to love and be loved in return. Like, then, you know, it was all worth it. And he extends his hand, but Dan doesn't take it. He just taps Dan on the shoulder and walks away. It's like, dude, Dan's going to be it's going to be I mean, Dan hasn't been all right for a long time. Ever since he hasn't been for a while, but Charlotte was really like the catapult that really sent him off the edge, and he's just been kind of down spiraling since then. The Celestial, like, back at the top of this season, he was good, but now, like, you know, upon learning the truth, he's been down spiraling again. So a lot of ups and downs for Dan over the course of the series. So hopefully things kind of work out for the better going forward for him. So there's that element to it. But yeah, at the end of it all, their dad talks about it. Like, he doesn't get too specific, but he does say, like, Lucifer was right. The fact is, I was kind of in denial. You know, father like son. He was like, "Oh, what? What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I'm just kidding." Mostly, but it's a situation where losing his powers, losing control of his powers, not knowing where they were. For him, he's like, I've been slipping, and not just recently. He's like, for a while now, and because of that, he's like, I think it's time that, you know, I retire. In which they're both looking at you like, wait, what, Dad? And before they could say anything, he's already gone. So what that necessarily entails, like God retiring, like what does that look like? Well, we've got one version of what that looks like. Once again, it's just interesting because, like, I won't go into it. It's all tangent. I'm normally all about tangent, but it's fine. Obviously, like, quote-unquote retiring, we saw that in Supernatural, what that necessarily looks in this. Obviously, because of the trailer, we have an idea what Lucifer's plans are for that, but we'll get to that soon enough in the season. I'm sure that's kind of where next episode's potentially going to take us. But obviously, it's the whole thing of, like, right, like, if you're not in control of everything, because also, like, it's something I forgot to talk about, but like in episode 9, Lucifer brought up, like, you know, why is it that hell doesn't need a warden now all of a sudden? He's like, I have a good reason. We never got into that, but it's like, can you just really up and leave? Won't there be issues? You know, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of like everything's kind of on autopilot, so it's not necessary. Like, everything's kind of predetermined, like, oh, things are going to play in a certain way, but also, like, people have free will to do what they want. I don't know. Like, how do you just up and retire from being God? We'll have to wait and see what that necessarily entails, whether he'll pop up next episode and be like, yeah, so before I go off on my vacation or whatever, let me give you, we'll see, or whether this is the last time we'll see him for a while in the season. I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.